This is Mother Earth's Plantasia. It's an album of electronic music specifically designed to help plants grow, a claim which the cover states is proven beyond any doubt. You've probably never heard of this album, and that's because the story behind it is as weird as the music itself. Plantasia was written, composed and recorded by this man, Mort Garson. Born in 1924, Mort Garson was a Juilliard-trained musician who began his career as a popular hit songwriter and even had a number one in 1962 with Our Day Will Come. Our day will come. But everything changed in 1967 when he first met inventor and engineer Robert Moog, who had just invented the first commercially available synthesizer. Moog's synthesizer took electronic music from a very experimental niche interest into something that could actually be used for commercial music. Early adopters included Wendy Carlos, who recorded an entire album of Bach on the synth. And by 1969, the Beatles began using it on a number of tracks on their Abbey Road album. Given the size and cost of the synth, most of them were owned by universities or recording studios, but that same year, 1969, Mort Garson became one of only 28 individuals to personally own a Moog synthesizer. The Moog synth opened up a whole new musical world. Almost overnight, Mort turned his focus away from being a pop songwriter and began building one of the most bizarre resumes in popular music. This included a psychedelic parody of The Wizard of Oz, a set of 12 albums, one for each sign of the zodiac, and he even produced the music that was broadcast during the Apollo 11 moon landing. The late 60s and early 70s not only saw this rapid technological development, but also a counterculture filled with alternative ideas. And living in Los Angeles, Mort was at the epicenter. One popular idea of the time came from this book, The Secret Life of Plants, a fascinating account of the physical, emotional, and spiritual relations between plants and man. A lot of what this book claims is disputed at best, such as plants being able to act as lie detectors, but some of its ideas were embraced more widely, including that plants grew faster and healthier when they would listen to music. At the very least, the fascination with houseplants captured the public imagination, and so plant stores began cropping up everywhere, including Mother Earth's Plant Boutique in Los Angeles, owned by Lynn and Joel Rapp. Lynn and Joel authored a couple of books to help customers in their newfound love of caring for houseplants, but their most interesting contribution came when they asked their friend Mort Garson to compose an album for the plants to listen to. This album wasn't sold anywhere, you couldn't go out and buy it. Mort's name isn't even on the cover. It was only given to customers who bought a houseplant at the Mother Earth plant store. And so, in 1976, Mort became the first person to produce music not for people to go out and buy, but for plants to listen to. Plantasia contains 10 tracks, 5 on each side, with each side opening with a more general piece of plant-inspired music, whilst the other 8 tracks are dedicated to a particular plant. I'm going to play the first 20 seconds of the opening track, so you get a feel of the music and see what you can notice as you're listening. Firstly, it's beautiful. That melody is just incredible. But of course, there is more behind this than just something that sounds nice. Listening to this track for the first time, there are a couple of things that you might notice. Firstly, the Moog synth was a monophonic instrument, which meant it could only play one note at a time. It couldn't play chords like you can on a piano or a guitar. This meant to create harmony, you would need to record multiple voices or lines, layer them on top of one another, and then this would create a harmony and the chords would exist as a result of that. So first of all, we have the melody, like you'd expect in any piece of music. But then within the music, there are these different voices, different sounds happening at the same time. For example, this bass line. It's actually just this chromatic line going down note by note. On its own, it's not that interesting, but if I play it with the melody, you get this beautiful harmony. The whole album continues like this, these interweaving lines of different ideas. Now, this on its own wasn't a new idea. Actually, contrapuntal music goes back centuries. Composers like Bach were masters of using counterpoint. But this is like Bach on acid. But there's one more thing that makes this album so special. The Moog synth was very limited in that it could only produce one note at a time, but it also gave Mort an infinite palette of sound that was perfect for this concept. Moog's innovation came from using the keyboard as a method of changing the voltage going into the synth, which the oscillator then translated into notes of different pitches. The oscillator gave out a simple sound, such as a sine wave, and the musician could then use the Moog's different modules to shape that wave into a unique sound. There were no presets like a trumpet sound or a violin sound. Every time someone used a synth, they would manually need to sculpt a new sound from these fundamental waves. You may have noticed that each track on Plantasia combines a musical form with a corresponding plant, a symphony or blues for example, and Mort is able to create a sound that is suitable for each of those styles. Whether that's the punchy bass on Baby Tears Blues, or the up-tempo drums on Swingin' Spathiphyllums. And not to discredit those others that use the Moog, Wendy Carlos or the Beatles or many others, but what Mort did so well is that he didn't try and make the Moog something it wasn't, but instead created music based on what made it different. It didn't matter that the claims about plants listening to music were disputed, because what Mort produced was something truly original. But ultimately, Plantasia became lost from memory. It was already pretty much unknown given its very limited release, but as those copies given away at the plant store started to wear out, it was only a matter of time until this album was lost altogether. Mort passed away in 2008, and Plantasia remained the last full-length work that he ever released. He remained prolific as a musician, working on commercials and soundtracks, and his influence on the next generation of electronic musicians was evident by how often he was sampled. But his work, like Plantasia, went mostly unnoticed. 10 years after his death, someone uploaded their copy of Plantasia to YouTube. Not because there was demand for it, it was almost unheard of. They just uploaded it for the love of the music. But slowly, Plantasia began to develop a cult following. Mort left behind a large collection of tapes for all of his music, and eventually, after years of searching, they found the original master tape of Plantasia. Demand for the album had grown enough that it was remastered and finally, 43 years later, released and available to purchase. I have a copy of it here, and it comes with this booklet, offering some insight into the nature of the plants featured on the record, and this introduction which features a few words from his daughter. My dad would be totally pleased to know that people are really interested in this music that had no popularity at the time. He would be fascinated by the fact that people are finally understanding and appreciating this part of his musical career that he got no admiration for back then. Maybe this record wasn't really for the Mother Earth plant store. Maybe Mort really wrote it for himself. Totally unique and yet not really noticed. Just like a houseplant.